Good evening, West Coast, Barbados, New Amsterdam, and of course right here on the Quarantine Coast. Welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News when we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country, especially right here in Barbados, but as well as across the country. And as I normally say, there are so many things that are taking place in our country. We live in a very dynamic society, and there are always so much to discuss. I want to apologize briefly for starting the program a little late, but work never stops in this country, especially political work. I want to bring you up to speed. I want to begin the program rather by bringing you up to speed with where we are in relation to the appointment of a chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission. You would have observed that today Dr. Steve Surajbali announced his retirement or resignation, or that he demitted office. I don't know which one of the phraseology is appropriate, but today he announced that he will no longer be functioning as chairman of the Elections Commission. That means that now more than ever we have to conclude the business of appointing a chairman of that commission. I am sure that you have been keeping abreast with the unfolding of events that surround the appointment of a chairman of GECOM. You will recall that an engagement began between the president and the leader of the opposition several months ago in relation to the appointment of a chairman of GECOM. There were exchanges of letters between the president and the leader of the opposition, and the process has largely been stalled because of the unreasonable, inaccurate, and erroneous interpretation which the leader of the opposition, which the president has been placing on Article 161.2 of the Constitution, because that is the article on which a chairman is appointed. The article says very clearly that a person is qualified to be appointed a chairman of the Elections Commission if that person is a judge, a former judge, or a person qualified to be a judge, or any other fit and proper person. The president, at the beginning of this exercise, for the first time ever since this article was put into the Constitution some 25 years ago, interprets this article to mean that only judges or persons who were judges or persons who are qualified to be judges can be chairman of the Elections Commission. By so doing, of course, the president has ignored the second category of persons who can qualify. That is, any fit and proper person. So when leader of the opposition, Bharat Jagdev, submitted the first list of names, the president, for the first time, a president has done it, rejected the 6 names. And I am sure that you know all about that. Significantly, the leader of the opposition did not come up with these names by himself, but commendably embarked upon a public consultation or consultative exercise which generated the 6 names that the leader of the opposition forwarded to the president for his appointment of one. The president rejected those names claiming that they are not fit and proper persons to be appointed. So the leader of the opposition then said, but I can't submit another 6 names because I don't understand what you understand, meaning the president. What the president understands the article to mean, the article of the Constitution. So we decided to write the president. And then the president wrote back the leader of the opposition and said, look, I want a nominee of yours to meet with Attorney General Basil Williams to iron out these constitutional matters in relation to what Article 162 or 161 of the Constitution means. And as you know, I have been nominated by the leader of the opposition to attend or to represent him at that engagement. I took along with me Priya Manik Chan, who is a member of parliament, a lawyer, former minister of the VP government. And we met with the Attorney General. The first time he was unprepared. And the second time he handed to us his interpretation of the Constitution. And we don't agree with what the Attorney General interprets the Constitution to say. Because the Attorney General, firstly, he admits that there are two categories, and which is a big plus, which is a big victory for us. Because they were saying all the time that only one category of persons qualify to be chairman of the Elections Commission. That is, judges, those who are qualified to be judges, or former judges. They were not recognizing the any other fit and proper category. Although Suraj Bali has come from that category, Granger himself was nominated by leader of the opposition, Hoyt, in that very category, because obviously Granger is not a judge, he's not a former judge, he's not qualified to be a judge. Before that you had Joe Singh, he came as well from that fit and proper category. And then before that you had Rudy Collins, and then you also had in that process Edward Hopkinson. All these persons came from the fit and proper category because they are not judges, they were never judges, and they were not qualified to be judges. Yet, in the year 2016, President Granger says that only one category of persons qualify, and that is the judges, the person who is qualified to be a judge, former judge, or a judge himself. The president up to last year, December, was not recognizing any other category. He was not recognizing the any other fit and proper category. And so was the Attorney General. Until, I don't know what happened, but the Attorney General finally conceded that there are two categories. However, he makes a distinction in his interpretation. He says that one category is superior to another. That judges, former judges, and persons qualified to be a judge is one category, and that any other fit and proper person is another category. However, the judge category somehow is superior to the other category, and therefore must take precedence over the other category. That is not right. The Constitution doesn't say so. All the Constitution says is that you must draw from either pool, and one can't be discriminatory against the other. One can be superior. One can be given greater priority over the other. It cannot be. The Constitution doesn't say so. And the Constitution itself is the document that says that you cannot discriminate. How can the Constitution itself discriminate? By making one set of people superior to the other. So it's utter nonsense, that aspect of the interpretation of the Constitution by Basil Williams. So we reject that. We don't accept that. In any event, however, today the leader of the opposition has written to the president and said to the president in a letter that, look, while we don't agree with Basil Williams' interpretation, we recognize that he has conceded that there are two categories. We don't accept his contention that one is superior to the other. We don't accept that at all. We are of the view that they are in equal standing and that persons can be submitted from either of these categories and of course from both of these categories. And then the leader of the opposition requests some clarification from the president today in a letter. He says, look, tell me how much you want from this category, how many must come from the judge category, and how many must come from the fit and proper category. Because you seem to be drawing a distinction between the two. So, tell us how much you want. Do you want a 4:2 ratio? Do you want a 3:3 ratio? Do you want a 5:1 ratio? Do you want a, whatever the permutations are? And secondly, the president says, the leader of the opposition asked the president to clarify what characteristics, what qualifications, and what attributes the persons from the fit and proper category must possess. Because we submitted 6 names. We thought, and civil society thought, that they were all fit and proper persons. Because it's civil society consultations that generated these names. It's not Bharat Jagdeo or the PPP or Anil Nandalal sat down in some room and came up with these names. These names were generated by consulting with the private sector commission, the religious organizations, the labor movement, and other civil society organizations. Even organizations in Berbice sent names and they were consulted. And that is how the 6 names came up as fit and proper person. It cannot be these thousands of people who comprise of these organizations and who these organizations represent would think that a person is fit and proper or that 6 persons are fit and proper and the president alone determines that they are all wrong. Are these thousands of people wrong or is the president wrong? Imagine thousands of people who are part of organizations come forward and they put forward 6 names as fit and proper persons. And then the president by himself determines that these 6 persons are not fit and proper and therefore rejects them. Is the president right and all these thousands of people are wrong, or are the thousands of people right and the president is wrong? Speaking for myself, I will go with a larger number. Many heads make light work. Many cooks, well, they say many cooks will spoil the broth, but many hands make light work. So that is the stage where we are at. The leader of the opposition has written to the president and has sought from the president as two clarifications. One, how these 6 names must what ratio or what number must come from each list, each category of persons. There are six. Do we take 3 from the judge category and 3 from the any fit and proper category, or does the president require 4 from the judge category and 2 from the fit and proper, or vice versa, or 5-1 or 1-5? So we wrote asking for that. And secondly, we asked for what are the qualifications, what are the attributes, what are the characteristics which a fit and proper person, according to the president, must possess. Because we are not sure. We submitted people who have PhD degrees. They have been rejected. We submit people who have master's degrees. They have been rejected. We submit people who have bachelor degrees. They have been rejected. We submit soldiers. They have been rejected. We submit professors. They have been rejected. We submit international ambassadors. They have been rejected. We submit businessmen, business executive. They have been rejected. We submit a lawyer, an accountant in Christopher Ram, internal auditor, forensic auditor, hired by this government, advised this government on taxation. They rejected him. So we are not sure. We are not sure what qualifies as fit and proper. And therefore, we are seeking that kind of clarification from the president. And the letter further says that as soon as the clarifications are received, then 6 names will be submitted. So we are sending that off because we don't want the president to use as a basis any hiatus in this process, or we don't want any delay on our part in this process, because the president, we know he wants to choose somebody by himself and not from the list submitted by the leader of the opposition. We know that he wants to do that, but we are not going to give him the opportunity. We are going to make it impossible, or at least tremendously difficult, for him to make a unilateral appointment. So we are keeping very close tabs on the situation. That is why you would have seen me writing to Basil Williams and say, we want to meet, and sending my letters to the press, because we want the public to be apprised of the process at every stage of the way. Only yesterday, Basil Williams gave me his interpretation of the Article 161(2) of the Constitution. He gave me it about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and by 6 o'clock yesterday afternoon, a public statement was already out from me saying that we don't agree with Basil Williams' statement. And then today, a statement has gone out from the PBP, and a letter has gone from the leader of the opposition to the president. The statement in the press explains the process, how we have reached where we have reached. And the letter to the president from the leader of the opposition, Maura Jagdeo, asks for these information that I spoke about earlier, and informs him that we are submitting 6 more names to him very shortly. So there is no opportunity for him to say that we have lapsed, that we have been negligent, that we have in some way delayed this process. We have been very proactive in this process. We have not been reactionary. We have driven this process forward. So I just thought that I'll bring you up to date in Berbice where we are in relation to GCOM. Because as you know, they are losing the next elections. There is no doubt about that. We are going to win the next elections. However, the only way that we cannot win the elections is if they rig it. And of course, if people stay home. So we have to ensure that we have a strong machinery at GCOM. That we have an independent and a strong and a professional chairman who will not take sides, who will not be biased, who will not be compromised, who will not be afraid of their threat of violence and of their bullyism and of their intimidation. Because that is part of their political armory. Part of their political armory is treachery, threats, physical violence, arson, and of course, rigging of elections. These are things that are part of their electoral strategy, and they're not shamed about that. That's simply part of their whole apparatus, strategy, and the resources that they have available to them, and they are not ashamed, they don't hide it. That's why they rig their own elections internally. So that is where we are in relation to GCOM. I want to move to another important issue that is taking place in our country. The older people who are listening to me will recall that after the 1968 elections were rigged, Forbes Burnham realized that he can't stay in power by rigged elections if he does not control the judiciary. Listen to me carefully. Since Forbes Burnham knew that he can't win a fair elections, and the only way he will be able to stay in power is by rigging elections, he knew, as a bright lawyer, he was a bright lawyer, that he will not be able to maintain himself in government and to stay in power if he does not get control of the judiciary. At that time, Guyana's highest court was the Privy Council in England. What that means is that when your case is concluded in the High Court, in New Amsterdam here, or in Georgetown, and you appeal, and the matter goes to the Court of Appeal, there was no Caribbean Court of Justice then. If you are not satisfied with the decision of the Court of Appeal, then you could have appealed all the way in England to a court called the Privy Council. That's a court established by the Queen, where Her Majesty's judges presided. Burnham knew that if there was an election petition filed against any rigged elections, and if it goes all the way to the Privy Council, he would be thrown out of government by that court. He would have been thrown out of government by that court. And the wickedness that he wanted to do, he would not have been able to do it because that court would not have tolerated it. And he could not have compromised, controlled, or influenced, or intimidated that court, because that court was made up of some serious white men located all the way in England. So what Burnham decided to do is to make Guyana a republic in 1970, and at the same time to use the occasion of republic whilst he was galvanizing patriotic sentiments, and he was waxing about nationalism and that we are the authors of our own destiny, all kind of patriotic sentiments he was exciting in the population. But that was only to camouflage his real intention. His real intention was to use the occasion of republic to abolish the Privy Council. And he rigged the 1968 elections with such a large majority in the parliament that he was able to do that. He was able to abolish the Privy Council because he rigged this election so big that he got enough seats in the parliament to do what is necessary to change the constitution to abolish the Privy Council, and that is what he did. And as soon as he abolished the Privy Council, 2 years after, the flag of the Guyana of the PNC started to fly in the Guyana Court of Appeal, which became the highest court in Guyana, because the Privy Council is no longer there, or was no longer there, and there was no Caribbean Court of Justice. So the Guyana Court of Appeal became the highest court in this land. When you lose there, there is no higher court to which you can go. So that court determined your destiny, or that court determined all cases in this country at that level, and there was no other appeal to any other higher court. And that is how Borno was able to put the flag of the PNC on top of that court building to show the world, well, now I have conquered the judiciary. I am the president, I control the executive because I rigged the elections. I rigged the elections with such a majority that I control the parliament. The only place I didn't control was the judiciary. Well, now this is my flag. I got rid of the white people. I got rid of the Privy Council. And now I am in charge. And that is why I'm going to put my flag, my party flag there. So if you are in doubt as to who in charge, and if you think that you can go there to that court to get justice against me, well, then you are mistaken, because that is my court, and that is why I put my flag there. And then 2 years after that, we moved into party paramountcy, and then we became a full-fledged dictatorship. I say all of that to make a connection now to what is happening now in the judiciary. Since February last year, the Judicial Service Commission made 4 recommendations to the Chancellor, to the President, for the President to appoint these 4 persons as judges. And the names are, and I'm going to reveal the names now. Don Gregory from the High Court was recommended by the Judicial Service Commission to go to the Court of Appeal. Let me repeat that. Justice Don Gregory was recommended by the Judicial Service Commission to go to the Court of Appeal as an appellate court judge or a Court of Appeal judge. Rishi Prasad, Justice Rishi Prasad, was also recommended to go to the Court of Appeal from the High Court as an appeal court judge. Sandil Kisoon, a lawyer in private practice, was recommended to be a High Court judge. And Damon Young, a lawyer in the Attorney General office, was recommended to be a High Court judge. So you had 2 judges, Rishi Prasad and Don Gregory Barnes, or Don Gregory. 1 Afro-Guyanese, 1 Indo-Guyanese, 1 man, 1 woman. And then you had Sandil Kisoon, and Ammonium, one man, one woman, one Afro, one Indo, to come to the High Court. The President never acted upon that recommendation because, in his view, obviously, he does not want those people to be judges. Why? He does not want to elevate the two from the High Court to the Court of Appeal, because those are not his choices. And he doesn't want these two to come enter the system, because he doesn't trust them. But the truth of the matter is, and the law of this country is, that the President don't have to trust them. They don't have to be the President. In fact, they ought not to be. That is why they are independent. And that is why the President is mandated to act when a recommendation is made to him for an appointment to be made by the Judicial Service Commission. He doesn't have a discretion. He has to act. If he disagrees with the recommendation, he must send it back to the Judicial Service Commission with a note that they must deliberate on it again. If the Judicial Service Commission does that and sends it back to the President is bound to appoint. So there is no discretion anywhere along the way. And the President can't refuse to act. That is how the Constitution is structured. But he is refusing to act in violation of the Constitution, because he wants to control the judiciary, and the personnel who have been recommended to him, in his view, he cannot control them. So there have been no appointments. Well, there are now consequences. Chancellor Acting Karl Singh retired on March Day. He was a judge in the Court of Appeal. B.S. Roy is also a judge of the Court of Appeal. He will go today, I think, on pre-retirement leave. What that means is that he's not coming back. So there are two appeal court judges. The third one, Yannette Cummings, Justice Yannette Cummings, is in the High Court as the Chief Justice. So she can't sit in the Court of Appeal regularly. She is stationed in the High Court. So currently, we have no judges in the Court of Appeal. You hear what I'm saying? Currently, there is a crisis with Karl Singh's departure and B.S. Roy going on pre-retirement leave. Those were the only two judges in the Court of Appeal. Every time they had to sit, every time that court had to sit, that court had to send for a judge in the High Court so that they will get three, because only two of them are there. Well, now both of them gone. So there is no court in the Court of Appeal. And hundreds of appeals are pending from Berbice alone. From Berbice alone, hundreds of appeals are pending to be heard by the Court of Appeal, where there is no judge. And the President doesn't care. The Attorney General is clueless. And that is the state where they have brought this country. Only in 22 months. In 22 months only. They have not reached a year as yet. And they have thrown the economic sector into crisis. They have thrown the financial sector into crisis. They have thrown the productive sector into crisis. They have thrown the social sector into crisis. Now the judicial sector, they have thrown into crisis. where we don't have a court of appeal to hear people's appeal. And there is no date that you can point to when the situation is likely to be rectified or remedied. Because nobody in the government is saying anything. And I have been warning them for over a year now that we were heading in this direction. That is what happens when you play politics with judiciary. Politics with the judiciary. So now you have a virtual crisis on their hands, and they are incapable of rectifying the situation that they have placed themselves in. Imagine when I was Attorney General, I got President Ramotar to increase the complement of High Court judges from 12 to 20. It was 12 since 1955. Since 1955, you had 12 judges in the system. When I was Attorney General, I got President Ramotar to increase it to 20. Because we need more judges, much more than 20, but we don't have the physical space. And I had planned to increase it from 20 to 30, but we first had to make space, physical space, more courtrooms had to have been constructed before such a move could have been made. Today we are back to zero. We are back to a worse than zero. We are back to a key place where we have never been before. The Guyana Court of Appeal started in 1966 when we became independent. And not since its inception has there ever been a situation where you have no judges to sit in that court. Even in the worst Burnham years, you had judges to sit. Burnham may have been a demagogue, Burnham may have been a dictator, Burnham may have been an authoritarian, but Burnham was a bright man. Burnham understood how the system worked. He was a brilliant lawyer. These here want to be Burnham. They are imitating Burnham. They are copying Burnham policy, but they do not have Burnham brain. They simply don't have his intellectual capacity. And that is why they are always going to find themselves in problems. You can't want to imitate Brian Lara when you don't have Brian Lara's class. You can't want to imitate Sachin Tendulkar when you don't have Sachin Tendulkar class. You're going to be a laughing stock. Well, that is what's going on here. So that is where we are with the judiciary. The other issue that I want to briefly touch on is the big, grand statement by Ramjatan Saturday in the newspapers, in Saturday's Kaicho News, that two ministers of the government, of the PPP government, are going to be charged this week. Another threat. Why are they keep talking about it and they're not doing it? The president said that there is no, well, first of all, the DPP said that all these forensic audits that they are doing, they have not yielded the evidence sufficient to press criminal charges. The DPP said that. That is a woman who has been in that office for over 25 years. She must know a little what she's talking about. Give her that credit. Claudette Singh, who has been a judge for about 35 years, she said, as police legal advisor, that there is not sufficient material to charge. The president said that based on all the advice that he has received, there is no basis to charge. Last month, Ramjatan said that the forensic audits was a stock taking or were stock taking exercises. He said so. And then I don't know if he drink too much Friday night and he get a hangover Saturday morning, or while he was drinking Friday night, I hear the newspapers called and he came up with this idea that I don't know how many people are going to be charged this week. But we are said from the beginning that we are waiting for the charges. Only talk and talk and talk. But these things are to distract you, the people, from their incompetence as a government to tackle the real issues facing the people of this country. The US dollar is now changing at 220 for one. Let me repeat that for those of you who do not know. The US dollar is changing at 220. One US dollar for 220 Guyana dollars. So in less than 2 years, it has moved from 200 to 220. None of the productive sectors are performing. Sugar, they want to close it down. Rice, they have no answer. They have no market. Gold, diamond in chaos. Forestry dead. Bauxite crawling. Economy downsliding. Business going down. Cost of living going up. Higher taxation. Less disposable income for the people out there. More banks are foreclosing and seizing people's property. The banks can't recover the loans which they have lent. Look at Scotiabank's statement and disclosures only this week, and you will see what I'm talking about. So the economy is collapsing, and rather than try to fix that, or accept that they are incompetent to do so and ask others for help, they hurrying and hustling to charge people. They carrying out their own little political dance at the side, so as to distract you, the people out there, from the real issue. When you read that 2 PPP ministers getting charged, that occupy your mind for the whole day. You forget that they're closing Skeldon. You forget that they stop planting at Providence and at West Kanji. You forget about that. You forget about thousands of people who are going to be knocked off. You forget about the 500 that they knocked off at Barama. 120 are going to be laid off at GT&T. And then another 120 at Digicel. You forget all of that. You forget that you have no rice market for rice. And you're worried about who gets in charge, and that is the ploy. These fellows can't charge nobody. And if they charge anybody, they can't win no case. And I don't care who they bring. I want them to come out of cabinet and come and prosecute. That is what I would like them to do. Ramjitan is a lawyer. Let him come and prosecute. And they have assembled a team of prosecutors. Let me tell you who they are. Two of them are from Joe Harmon's former law office. They are still there. They took over his practice. So they are his boys. Two of them from Basil Williams' law office. One of them is Nicolette Henry brother, the minister Nicolette Henry brother. His name is Patrice Henry. And the other one is Michael Somersall, a former commissioner of police, assistant commissioner of police, who was on their list of candidates for the last two elections. So is 6 of their close cronies. They have budgeted $100 million to pay to prosecute PVP ministers. And I'm saying that they cannot win any case. And they are wasting time and they are wasting people's money. And that is why the PVP issued a statement over the weekend and told Ramjitan to investigate the allegations that thousands of dollars are paid for tin permits. I am told 40,000, between 40 to 60,000 that the ministry charging as bribe to get a tin permit. $500,000 for a handgun and $1 million for a shotgun. Bribe. They must investigate that. Clive Thomas must come out of the wheelchair and investigate that. What we must know, what Nagamutu's son-in-law doing at Skeldon Estate divestment deal. Where he parachuting from? Who is this guy? How suddenly he become involved in Skeldon divestment? What role is he playing? You saw in the newspapers, 2 aircrafts were acquired by the GDF. I am told that he has a hand in that too. Nagamutu's son-in-law. And then up to now, we don't know how much money was spent for Durban Park. And work was being done at Durban Park just the other day. Again, they're building back a fence. We want to know how much money was spent there. We want to know about this secret company owned by Larry London that did all the construction work for the government without going to tender. Hundreds of billions of dollars of work. They collected hundreds of millions of dollars in donations. We want to know where's the list of who donated what. And these fellows going to talk about filing charges. There is more corruption in 2 years in this government than existed in 25 years of PVP government. More corruption. There are more contracts not going to tender, just bypassing the tender system, than ever before in the history of this country. So we are waiting for the charges to be filed, and then we will take it from there. We are not afraid of any charges, and that is why we are debating them. Let us stand up to the public and debate the corruption. They don't want to debate it. We said to them, let us show you our assets, and you show us ours. Let us make all public, so that the people can see who owed what. So that I could tell you how much money I have, and you tell me how much money you have. They don't want to do that. We tell them to disclose. We will disclose our declarations in the GRA, and let them disclose theirs. They don't want to do that. They are not filing their returns at the Integrity Commission. Why? That is the place where you have to say how much money you have in the bank, how much cars you own, how much house you own. We are doing that. And yet we are being accused of corruption. And they are not doing that. They are refusing to do it. And they are the accusers. We really live in an upside down world. Anyhow, we are going to take some phone calls now. I think I've said enough. I called it, the phone was going all the time. Now I'm not seeing any calls coming through. So we are waiting for the charges to be filed. What more vulgar act of corruption do you want to see more than the rental of a house in Albies Town for $14 million a month to use as a drug bond? Caller, you're near.
Hello.
Hi.
Good night, Annie.
Good night.
And you look so good this night too.
Thank you. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Portland. I'm trying all day on your program to call you, but tonight I try and I get through.
Okay, thank you.
I want to tell you tonight that these people them only looking at the millionaires and they are not looking at the poor people because you the one, I thought you the one that get the blessing from upstairs to rule this country and get this country in a proper manner. These people don't care about these poor people in this country.
They don't come out of Georgetown. You realize that? When the last is your minister in Berbice?
Well, let me tell you, we in Berbice, we in Region 6 don't have nothing at all from this government.
Not you alone. In Region 5, they are plundering the people. They are raising all the rates at MME. That region depends upon agriculture. That region depends upon MMA lands. And they have thousands of their own supporters that they just abandoned. They raise the people them rent from $3,000 to rent and drainage charges from $3,000 to $15,000 per acre. And not once anyone of them going to visit the people. They send the Minister of Agriculture who nobody knows. Before 2015, nobody in this country knew who this guy was. And this is the policy that they imposed on the farmers of this country. He never went into a rice field in his life. He never went into a cane field in his life. Anyway, caller, thank you.
Okay, good.
And that is the guy that they imposed on the poor as farmers and sugar workers and farmers of this country. So the caller is saying that Region 6 is neglected. It's not Region 6 alone. It's Region 1 to 10. Linden. More than 75% of the people in Linden voted for them. You should go see what happened there. People bawling in Linden. Caller, you're near. So these people have abandoned everybody and they are having a nice ball in town, in Georgetown. They don't come to Berbice, they fly out of the country. They are going out of the country. They don't come to Berbice and so on. If Moses Nagamoto comes to Berbice, he goes by his brother. He don't stop nowhere and talk. Well, they can't stop anywhere and talk because people cussing and abusing them anywhere they go. So you really can't blame them either. Calling your near?
Yes.
Where are you calling from?
From 6.
72 village, yes.
You know, I want to speak to Mr. Passman. Them only promise. What is hell? Them a take 50%. And them a cut down all them poor people money. What
Well-
do you think about that?
Yeah, but thank you, caller. So the caller has reminded me that they haven't checked 50. The first thing, I've never seen people in my life. You know, it got bare-faced people, it got black-yarded people. Well, these guys here, these set of people here, there's 30 of them, they take the cake. It's the most bare-faced and black-yarded people I've ever seen in my life. They lied to every single person and they took government. To every sector they lied to. The poor children of UG, they lied to them. They're going to give them jobs. Now Ranger telling them they're going to sell cocoa rice and sell plantain chip and breadfruit chip. They lied to the rice farmer telling them they're going to get $9,000 a bag for paddy. They lied to the sugar worker telling them they're going to get 25% increase in salary. They lied to the people of Linden as they're going to create jobs for them. Because see what happened in Linden. So every sector they lie. And as soon as they go into government, they take 50% increase for themselves. And they're having a ball since, traveling first class all over the world. They don't come out of Georgetown. And each one of them has a Land Cruiser. Each one of them purchased a Land Cruiser. Who used to live in rent, who used to live in some houses, now they get mahal to live in. There are thousands of US dollars are being paid in rent by this government for ministers to live. So they're having a grand time. But they have 2 more years. Call it on the air.
Good night.
Good night.
Are you talking everything, but I ain't talking about the tablet and the hospital.
Oh Lord, Auntie, we talk about that almost every program. I had Vishwa Mahadev here last week. And every program that I have, I get complaint about the state of the medical sector in this region.
Well, I fall down from the step, come down right down. And I thought with sugar and high blood pressure. So I go to the hospital and I asked them. They check my pressure, said to get test my sugar and get me injection to the pain. They said they do have no injection with strip or anything like that. Then I turn and tell her you said Medimax 3.
Alright, caller. Alright. Thank you very much. I will continue to highlight it. Once again, I call upon the relevant authorities, the Regional Health Authority, the Ministry of Health, the Minister of Health, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Health, the regional administration here. I continue to receive complaints regarding shortages of drugs and medicine at every institution in Region 5 and 6, especially the New Amsterdam Hospital. And I'm calling again to rectify this situation. I will be the first to admit that when we were in the government, you had problems in the health sector, but not to this extent. Not to this extent. And yet they are paying $14 million to store condoms in a house in Tiger Bay, in Alboystown. This is where I have to say goodbye. The operator has signaled to me that I have exhausted my time on this program this evening. So I want to say goodbye and good night to you. Have a great week, and until we meet again, stay good. And on the next occasion, we will continue our lively and exciting and informative exchange and discussion. Thank you.